Hi, this video focuses on the story that's been adapted into season 1 of the anime. So if you have not finished the Dungeon Meshi manga but have seen season 1 of the anime, this video is safe for you. Dungeon Meshi has a wide array of characters and an ensemble cast that takes the lead. But one of those that I would argue makes up the main ensemble is a character who is hardly around in the present. Falin is the main driving point of the plot in Dungeon Meshi. She is the reason Laios and the others are trudging through the dungeon eating monsters. Despite not physically being with the main group, Falin's presence in the story is felt very strongly. She's a character that haunts the narrative. However, I believe Falin is utilized better than some characters who hold a similar role in stories. And I do believe that is down to the variety of who she is to those around her. A lot of media that has a character that haunts the narrative, the character is usually held up on some sort of pedestal and loved by everyone around, and you don't really get to see much of any other side to that. For example, in the Life is Strange video game, the first one, the character Rachel Amber haunts the narrative. All of the characters seem to hold some sort of respect for her, and I know this is contradicted by graffiti you find in the game, but the characters themselves, the way that you actually get to know Rachel Amber is through people who adored her, treated her like she hung the stars and the moon in the sky. Like, she is perfect in a sense. And I know she's not actually perfect, but that's the feeling that the game always gives. And Falin in Dungeon Meshi, while she can lean in that territory, there's more to her than that. Like, we get a fuller picture than, oh, she's so loved. Falin is not some mystical being that everyone loved and admired. She's a person. And the best way to get to know a person who isn't around is to actually see them through the eyes of those who knew them. We'll start on the more shallow end with Shuro and work our way through the depths of Falin's character. Shuro admired Falin. He believed himself to be in love with her and had even asked her to marry him. So quick reminder, Falin and Shuro never actually had a romantic relationship. I always got the impression that he honestly may not have even known her that long, but that is just, I think, something I've made up. Regardless though, Shuro and Falin were at the most friends that he had a crush on her, and at the least, co-workers.
I've never met a woman as fascinating as her. I love her voice, the way she thinks, her beautiful smile. The unfortunate thing is, I never told her exactly how I felt. I wish I would have told her sooner.
What? He proposed out of nowhere? How bizarre.
But I get it. Falin is pretty and she is incredibly fascinating. I'd have a crush and believe myself to be in love with her too. Shuro is kind of my self-insert. Anyway, Shuro admires Falin in an incredibly romanticized way. This isn't to say that he doesn't actually care for her, and maybe he could love her, given the time to truly get to know her. We can see that Shuro is incredibly devoted, going as far as returning to the dungeon as quickly as he could with his own crew to save Falin, pushing himself to his limits in order to beat the digestive system of the dragon. Through Shuro, we get to see Falin as someone who is very kind-hearted, maybe a bit soft-spoken, and worth fighting for. She's easy to love and easy to get along with, but that is a very, very limited look at her, and Shuro, I feel like, tends to overlook some of her flaws, because we do know that there are a lot of similarities between Falin and Laios, and the things that Shuro hates the most in Laios are things that he admires in Falin. Going a little bit deeper, Marcille is someone who's known Falin for a very long time. They were childhood friends who met at magic school. They seemed to be fast friends, and we learned that Marcille was Falin's only friend. Through Marcille's memories of their time in school, we learned that Falin was a bit of an outcast. Marcille meets Falin with kindness and curiosity. Marcille had been a prodigy with an impressive lineage, so when Falin didn't fawn over her, that made her different. And once Marcille saw that Falin seemed to be pretty skilled at magic despite first impressions, she was hooked on wanting to get to know this kid. Through Marcille's eyes, we see Falin as a person who thinks outside of the box and harbors a great respect for the balance of the nature of dungeons, which is special because Marcille wants to learn all she can about dungeons so that she can make her own dungeons, maybe safer dungeons for adventurers to explore. Falin warms up very, very quickly to Marcille, showing her her wonder for the world and her kindness. Falin is just doing her own thing and finding peace in her secluded places. One of the ways Falin and Marcille bonded early on was when Falin showed Marcille the dungeon where she got dirt for their class project, assignment, whatever you want to call it. Falin was quick to open up to someone who was willing to understand and get to know her. Falin is friendly, even if it's in a way that can be off-putting to some. Falin is gentle, and she's a very loyal friend. Laios shares that Falin talked a lot about Marcille after they met at school. Falin thinks very highly of the people she cares about, and it's clear to see that Marcille's friendship is incredibly important to, honestly, the both of them.
Falin, she would always pick up weird things and bring them to me. Like strange smelling fruits or bits of grass and herbs. I never knew why she chose me specifically.
I bet she wanted to eat that stuff with you.
I wanna eat another good meal with her again.
I'm sure we will soon.
Marcille is with Laios every step of the way for the most part when it comes to saving Falin. She's the one who is the most upset about eating monsters, but she'll do anything to save her friend, to save Falin. If Falin is a friend who garners that kind of respect and devotion, she must be pretty special. I do believe that Marcille is in love with Falin, but I do recognize that that's not actually canon and maybe not the best lens to do a character analysis of this kind, but that understanding can further the devotion that Marcille has to Falin. Regardless of how you see their relationship, it is very clear to me that Falin means a great deal to Marcille. Their friendship is special, and Marcille would do anything to save that friend, even black magic. I mean, ancient magic. Either way, the magic is not legal, and Marcille is willing to risk the consequences if it means Falin gets to live.
Through Marcille, we see a girl who is incredibly curious and adventurer at heart and different than the rest of their peers.
We see a girl that respects what most don't. We see a girl that revels in the wonders of the dungeon that most take for granted. We see a girl who is willing to coexist with monsters when it is safe to do so. We see a girl who's a wonderful friend. Not because the story needs us to believe that Falin is a good friend, but because Falin and Marcille share similar interests, goals, maybe not goals, but they work well together, and their interest and the things that they are interested in doing with their lives complement each other very well, and they have bonded over that, a genuine bond that is conveyed to the audience in a very clear way. Falin and Marcille grew close naturally, and we get to see parts of that journey through flashbacks and the way that the characters talk about each other. And the culmination of this friendship journey when Falin is temporarily brought back to the party halfway through season 1. Marcille adores Falin, and Falin adores Marcille. They go so well together, and seeing their friendship makes Falin feel more like a person and not an ideal that a lot of character that haunts the narratives end up being. The most important person in this whole scenario, though, is Laios, Falin's older brother, and I'll say Dungeon Meshi does a very, very good job at portraying a close sibling relationship. We see Falin through the eyes of someone who not only grew up with her, but someone who deeply respects her and cares a great deal for her. Sure, we get to see that Laios and Falin maybe fought a little bit or just had normal sibling things, but Laios and Falin were there for each other throughout it all. They were both ostracized growing up, with Laios being weird and Falin being skilled in magic. However, it is through their relationship that we can see that Falin was a bit of a weirdo too, and I say that with all the utmost respect and adoration. Laios and Falin shared a strong interest in biology, specifically relating back to monsters and dungeons. They even fought about the monster book that Laios has because they both wanted to read it and learn more. Laios does focus more on monsters though, and it looks like Falin is just interested in dungeons, ghosts, monsters, just all of it. She likes all of it, where Laios seems very, very focused on monsters specifically, but that might just be my interpretation having only seen the anime. Either way, they worked well together and were very capable adventurers. Laios is fiercely loyal to Falin and is willing to face his own demise again for the chance of saving her. I'm not even taking into account the fact that he's willing to eat monsters to save her, because I think he would do that anyway. But to go back into the dungeon with no supplies, his crew essentially cut in half, to face a dragon that beat them once before under better circumstances is objectively a losing battle. And it's a battle Laios is willing to fight for the off chance he can save his sister before she is digested. I myself have 2 younger siblings, and while I may not be able to say with full confidence that I would do the same thing, I do understand the drive Laios feels to see his sister again, to do his best to save her, to step up and be the older brother who maybe even feels guilty for getting Falin in that situation by becoming adventurers. We know that Laios was the one who wanted to be an adventurer, and he didn't really want Falin to follow in his footsteps, but she did insist on doing so, and I'm sure Laios feels some sort of guilt for that. Their close-knit bond is compounded by the fact that Laios has a strained relationship with their parents, leaving Falin as his main family member that he can lean on. Falin is likely the only person in his life who understands him. I know Laios isn't officially labeled as autistic, but he ticks all the boxes, so most of us who have autism have claimed Laios as one of us. Because he does mirror the experiences of many, basically to a T. He is textbook autism. There's a wonderful video essay about that, I'll link it below. I think I said that on my last Dungeon Meshi video, I don't know. That being said, I need to stress how important that link of understanding is for Laios though. Humans in general crave to be understood and to connect with others. Don't lie to yourself and say that you don't. Human beings are pack creatures, and it hurts to not be understood by and accepted into your pack. Falin is Laios' pack. She gets him in a way that those around him just didn't, and that's special. And that also sets Falin apart from literally every other character in this show. Although that may not entirely be true, because there is Senshi, who also seems to be on a very similar wavelength. Either that or he understands. It can be hard for neurodivergent people to feel fully understood and accepted by those around them, whether it's due to social masking hiding their true selves, or in the case of Laios, a lack of masking that is off-putting to those around them, causing the person to be ostracized. Not only is Falin Laios' sister, she is also the person who Laios has felt fully accepted and understood by. Sure, Marcille, Chilchuck, and the rest of their party before seemed to accept Laios, quirks and all, for the most part, but there was still a lack of full understanding. There was moments of disconnect, pushback to his more eccentric sides, and to be fair, I think those closest to Laios do their best to understand him, and we know Marcille, Chilchuck, and Senshi do genuinely care for Laios and accept him as one of their own, but there is still a disconnect that Laios experiences with them that he doesn't have with Falin. Through Laios, we get to learn the stranger sides of Falin. We see why her peers may be not as accepting of her, maybe shunned her. We understand the depths that Shuro overlooked because he thought she was pretty. Laios gives Falin a context that would be lost if we didn't get to see his point of view of things. What Laios adds to the understanding of Falin is further supported through Kabru. Sure, Kabru never actually met her, but he pays attention to people. He knows how those on the island feel about the Toden siblings. Both of them are weird, strange, off-putting, and not the most trustworthy. But we, as the audience, with an inside look into Laios' brain, know that that lack of trust is due to their oddities and their motivations that are seemingly incomprehensible to those who are not familiar with them. In a world ran by your typical human greed, Laios and Falin are scary because they're just here to have a good time and to basically learn more about the world around them. They're not leaders for the sake of gaining power, and that makes them unpredictable. The general public is put off by Falin, but she's not as outwardly off-putting as Laios. Yet those who know her admire and respect her. Falin is a kind sister, a loyal friend, a valuable party member. She's a woman who admires the world around her and enjoys learning about biology. She's a woman who deeply cares about those around her. We see this ourselves firsthand through our own eyes when Falin sacrifices herself to make sure the rest of the party makes it out of the dungeon alive, leaving herself to be eaten by the dragon, alone. This is the first scene of Dungeon Meshi, and our first impression not only of the series, but of Falin Toden herself. We see ourselves why someone may be driven to save her. Maybe that's one thing Falin has over every other character that haunts a narrative. You get to see her in her rawest form, not only through her people close to her and her connections, but you see her in moments where she's making tough decisions, where she chooses to sacrifice herself for the greater good of her sibling, her friends, her party members. Falin is incredibly selfless, and she's just great. She's great. I love Falin. I'm in love with Falin. What can I say? I've been doing a lot of thinking about why I love Falin so much, because she has 5 minutes of screen time? And okay, 5 minutes is exaggerating a bit. She has a lot more than 5 minutes of screen time, but she leaves such a big impression, especially on me. And I was trying to figure out, why do I care so much about this woman that I've never really heard speak all that much? I see her in flashbacks, sure. I see her through the eyes of the people who care about her. That's it. It's seeing her through the eyes of the people that care about her, which is why I wanted to break down Marcille and it's mostly Marcille and Laios, but I feel like Shuro needed to be mentioned because that's the surface level, ooh, she's pretty, she's cute. Anyway, I'm completely off script at this point. I don't script my outros. This was just a shorter look, I guess, into characters in Dungeon Meshi and how Falin connects to them. I can't stop thinking about her. You can't stop thinking about her. I need to read the manga so that I can actually do deeper character analysis into this series because I love it so much. But anyway, this was a much shorter video. Anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for watching it to the end on this one. For those who stick around on my channel a lot, my next video is probably going to be Baldur's Gate 3 related, unpacking the Dark Urge. Finally, patch 7 should be out by the time this video drops, and I will be deep in scripting my Dark Urge video, and then some point soon I'm also doing the next installment of the Black Butler deep dives. I'm not giving a estimated time on that because I don't have one. But anyway, if you guys like Baldur's Gate or Black Butler or other anime, definitely stick around. I'm having fun talking about anime. Anyway, that's it for me, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!